So Liam, you mentioned the phrase kind of resting on your laurels, and then Brandon, you said that, folks who they work on their brand and they maintain a consistent presence. Those are people that are not resting on their laurels. And Zeb, you kicked this off by kind of asking what's next. So I'm curious if you have advice for people who aren't resting on their laurels or who are ready to get up and do stuff and take action, but they're maybe not sure where to start. Like what are your, you know, X, Y, and Z? Here's what I would do if I was an operator. I know that's a big question, very broad.
Yeah.
Lee, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah. I mean, my recommendation is if you have been investing in your brand, continue to do so. I mean, if you're investing in your brand, you have a good solid foundation. All those traditional SEO elements have been built out. Continue to, build out your footprint. There was a study that came out recently that within Google AI mode, direct operators take up about 80% of the space within conversation flows as opposed to the OTAs, which take up about 13%. So there's huge opportunity here within the generative AI spaces for, operators to one, invest, but also be an early adopter and see the fruits of their labor by edging out those pesky OTAs that always have big budgets and can push, smaller operators around a little bit. So there's just so much opportunity. And, now that it's kind of the traditional off season, um, I would, recommend to any outfitter to invest their off season time into building out content.
Great.
That's fascinating that for the GEO stuff, the actual operator, the direct website, the small mom and pop is taking over 80% of the populated amount. Where again, the big guys, the OTAs who take a commission, that's those pesky things you talk about that everybody feel like they can't go without. It's only 13%. And you know what's
Hmm.
crazy is you actually look at people's revenue distribution. And for those that are actually sustainable and they're not super overly reliant on OTAs, which I don't see many of those anymore, it's about those OTAs are going to be max like 15% of their revenue anyways. So this is wild because here's an opportunity for those early adopters to get higher margins and to be more relevant for people,
Establish that authority.
establishing authority and creating their content. That's cool. So if sounding for the listeners in here, if creating content sounds overwhelming and you don't know exactly where to start, that AI accelerator that we're going to start middle of October is going to give you a starting point and a place to just start small. Everything that we do within the Eddy, if you listen to a recent Fireside chat we had with Rob Miles, he said that one of the best things in the Eddy is no matter what we're working on, there's always a crawl, walk, and run fashion. So if you're just in the crawling phase, just start with something small. We'll give you something small to work on just to get started. Or if you've been creating content for years and you have the really strong brand that these guys are talking about, you've been on top of it, there will be a run that's going to continue to challenge you as well as encourage you to be ahead of the game in that early adoption and to start maximizing that revenue and profitability. We also see too within our client base, those that are on that front edge, the price points far exceed those that are even in the main majority. So higher margins, higher price point. We encourage you to at least start because pricing is a direct reflection of your presence and your value prop and how engaged people are with you and your content and your website. If you're a price taker, it's because you're just like everybody else. If you're a price setter, it's because you're doing stuff like this. All right, soapbox done. Cool. So that's one things that you could do right now. Brandon, do you have any other, what you could do right now for those operators that are just getting started or those that are really trying to do this without having support like Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about this the other day. There's so much to consume here, right? It can be very overwhelming. And my recommendation is do what you can do well, right? Don't, taste a little bit of everything, trial some things out, but don't get so overwhelmed trying to do everything. Choose something that you're going to do really, really well and stay focused on that goal long term. I think, building your content and investing in your brand is something that every business should be doing well. So try to stay in that lane for as long as you can. And once you're seeing success, then it's maybe time to innovate a little bit more. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Love that.
Yeah.
There's two books that are coming to mind on branding that I've looked at and we've used internally, but also that we've leaned into, especially with this last year with operators and people within the Eddy, is Simon Sinek Start With Why. To listen to and absorb that book and to use him as a way to kind of reflect about your organization's why and those core values that you have. If we look at outfitters' websites, so much of everybody's website and why they all look the same is everybody's selling the what's, according to the book. They're
Mhm.
selling the features, they're selling the mechanics, they're selling the raft trip, but rarely do you ever see or feel, the deeper components on what's that why. So in Simon Sinek Start With Why, it really challenges to think about those whys that you have within your organization. Why do you do it in the first place? Why do you connect people with the outdoors? Why do you have such an impact on the families and the groups that are here? It comes down to the personal development. It comes down to pushing people beyond their comfort zone. It comes down to helping those people become better team players and all of that kind of stuff. That's the why, right? So branding starts with that why. From that branding and from that those key leaders that define that, you get into the how, which is communicating that to your managers and communicating to the people and letting your managers figure out, well, how are we going to deliver the why? And then the what is what you ultimately sell. So we're actually going through in the Eddy along the same time as the Accelerator and the regular Eddy itself in October to parallel this branding and to parallel this content creation, having operators go through their Simon Sinek Start With Why. Following that in November, we're going to be getting into the Multi-Vision, which is a Zebulon original that challenges owners and top managers to think about what is it they want for their business, for themselves personally, professionally, and their finances this year and the next 3 years. So those components really help organizations and operators plan out, not just this next year, but the next couple years. And it also creates so much of the buzz and it creates so much of what should be content built around within the accelerator. So those two parallel nicely. The other branding video book that I wanted to mention,
Say, you mentioned two. What's the second?
um, Donald Miller's
Story brand.
story branding. It just stayed in my mind. Story branding, and using that magnaphone. And one of the things that came out of that book for me when I listened to it and read it years ago was that we're all the Luke Skywalkers. Every individual person's a Luke Skywalker and they want to go on a journey. They want to be challenged and there's going to be an antagonist, right? And oftentimes that antagonist is that fear of the water or that fear of a comfort zone or whatever it is that they're pursuing. And that in that book, there's the guide and there's the person that comes alongside them. And I think this industry is primed so well to communicate that from a branding position that would differentiate them from the scene, especially when it comes to group-based sales, non-general bookings. You can get into the general booking scene too, but for branding and just if you want a place to start on good branding, those two books would be lucrative for anybody that doesn't know where to start.
Yeah.
You guys have any other book recommendations on those fronts?
Not off the top of my head. Nothing marketing related at the moment.
I didn't ask you that beforehand, so I put you on the spot there.
Yeah.
Cool. Another one is Mike McCowitz's Pumpkin Planning. So the Pumpkin Plan, and this is about really segmenting your audience to find that 20% that generates 80% of your revenue. And
Yep.
then we go through in the Eddy Accelerator last year, the Group Sales Accelerator, which if you join the Eddy, you can watch all the recordings of those and execute on itself. But this was our first play with AI that we would have operators call up. We would isolate, we would use data based on the exports out of reservation systems and their CRMs to isolate who those top 20% customers segments were. Then we had the operators go through phone calls with key customers. We'll say they called 100 customers, and we used AI to record it in the background. And Corey dumped all those transcripts and then used AI to extract the value proposition, which we then used to create content. So those outfitters that executed on it, we saw significant increases in their group-based sales this last year. Not only did those groups return usually once in the season, but they returned multiple times, and group numbers far exceeded expectations. So, branding, target audiencing, extracting this stuff and creating content around it is works, and it's super profitable. So, this accelerator is going to be for the broader audience segment. Okay. All right. Sales pitch done again. Okay. So, now that's where we've come from, right? That's what you guys found out that worked this year. What's on the horizon at Thomas that you would like to share with our audiences on strategically where your organization's going in this front and how you guys are leaning into this changing landscape to help outfitters from your service professional side of things?
Mhm. Yeah, I guess I'll take the first piece and then I'll pass it to you, Liam. I think a big part of what we're doing is approaching, we're modifying and modernizing our clients' approach to content. We're restructuring pages to not only convert better because we need to convert less traffic than we've ever had before, right? But also we need to show up and get that organic impression. They need to have more information than they have had in the past. It needs to be more robust. So, we're looking at some changes going into next season for sure for a lot of clients. Things are ever evolving. I'm sure that our approach to this is going to evolve alongside that. But we saw a lot of success in restructuring our clients' content this last season. And I think we're going to continue on that path.
And I know the change that you guys make is always lucrative because we have access to client data and sales data from outfitters from all across the nation using all kinds of service professionals. And when dollar for dollar push comes to shove, Tomis.Tech is usually one of the highest performers. So I want to acknowledge that and just kind of plant that seed and say that for you guys, that what you guys do and how you guys execute on it is highly competitive and again, dollar for dollar, not much more profitable in broader sense, but definitely on that more profitable end. Okay. So
And I think your flexibility, you talk about, adjusting your approach. I think that speaks volumes for your impact just because you've got to be flexible right now. You've got to be able to roll with whatever AI punches come along. So good
Oh,
on.
yeah. Yeah. Liam, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up with that, when I touched on the timeline of how things are rolling out with AI, you look at when AI mode was rolled out for users in the US, and then when it expanded to 180 plus countries and 5 new languages, that was just the span of 3 months. That is one quarterly marketing strategy. So it used to be that, I would outline deliverables for a client and they would be set in stone. That's changed. I'm having conversations with clients every month where deliverables are changing and I'm staying up to date on the latest and greatest news in AI search. And I think, not to toot the Thomas horn too much, but that's really been a great value proposition of having a dedicated marketing manager is that, operators don't have to stay up to date with this information. I'm breathing in the air of AI news every single day, and I get to bring that to every single monthly call. And it sounds tedious, but honestly, I enjoy it. So, yeah,
Operators wear enough hats as is.
for
If you're
sure.
willing and ready and willing to take on that AI and marketing hat, why not have them hand it over?
Yeah,
And also too, like we all have our working strengths and interests, right? And like this is your strength and this is your interests. So leaning into those strengths and interests, you can do it in a scalable way and an operating way, right? So I'm sure you have a meeting with client A on Monday, and then you learn something that you take to client B on Monday. And by the time that you're on client F, on Thursday, you've already had 3 or 4 days of knowledge and meetings and applications that person on that Thursday literally got the benefit of a half a dozen meetings beforehand. And then you extrapolate that across the whole summer, you can't just show up to AO and sit at a conference and get that quick of expertise and that timely. When I first got into this, and Brendan, when we were both green, literally half a decade ago, right? There were so many people chatting about still producing their trifolds with their price point that they would put out there and print, right? Everything, even half a decade ago, was still very print based. It was like you would set that strategy at the beginning, you would print it, you would run through it all year long. And in today's evolving landscape, Liam, where you literally said it can change, not just quarter by quarter, but week by week, I don't think you can hit your targets and goals in today's world. I mean, you could, good luck, knowing your audience base, right? And I guess this comes your segmentation. If 98% of your clients are returning customers and they're happy to ingest 10% increases every year, and no matter what, they're going to be there tried and true, sure, you could do that. But how many operators are 98, 99% returning base?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other, I'll offer some other credibility statements in that you bring up a good point, Zeb. We have data from all of our operators across various industries, various regions, the whole Northern Hemisphere, and that gives us a lot of information as we move from room to room. So when we see trends and things like that working in our strategies, it's very easy to replicate that. And we can respond much quicker than the average CMO or, internal marketing team. Yeah.
Mhm. And what we see too is those operators that are building systems and philosophies and everything based on industries outside of outfitting, they're the ones coming in and shaking things up. So
Mhm.
if you build it just like the other operators down the road, down the river, wherever it might be, you're going to be just like them too. And in today's world, we can't be just like everybody else anymore.
Yep.
So having that external insight, having that external knowledge, bringing that in, challenging the industry to evolve and grow, challenging individual operators starts one operator at a time. And you guys are doing so well at that.
Yeah. Thanks.
You bet.
I'm curious what you two thought of when this was kind of just put on your plates. Like, hey, we're gonna have a conversation with Zebulon. You guys get to run with it. Where did your guys' brain go first when you're like, these guys want to talk about AI? What did you want to talk about?
I mean, these are conversations that are happening internally at Thomas every single day. So not only are we constantly building case studies, experimenting and documenting how those experiments go, it was timely, I guess, was what I was thinking. And I think that's why Evan was so quickly like, Brandon and Liam are the guys. They'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Because Liam and I are chatting about this all the stuff all the time. Even in the elk woods occasionally.
That's
It's
why
not
you
the main
guys
focus then.
that's why you
That's
guys
why you didn't get any animals. Jeez.
Yeah. Liam, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. You said it great. I think there's been so many conversations that we've been having, and Brandon was holding me back a little bit from diving too deep down the rabbit hole of technical SEO elements and various theories that I've been reading about. But what we've talked about today is really what it all comes down to. And then those more in-depth conversations, that boils down into deliverables and client conversations.
Something that I've been, like Zeb mentioned, the accelerator, I've been compiling a huge amount of resources and trying to do a lot of legwork so that we can just share information and dive in. And something I've come across, but just today, actually, Harvard Business Review, looking at the date, I guess it was published 3 days ago. It just came across my radar today. But the title of the article is AI generated Workslop is destroying productivity. And that's put a phrase to something that I've come across where a lot of people are kind of sort of trying to jump on the AI bandwagon and like, oh, I'm just going to have AI write this. And then it just produces crap, or they don't go through and put the human touch on it. And how do you guys avoid this work slop? Because I'm sure you've come across it, and I'm sure that you also can pinpoint it immediately. Um, and just 100% AI generated content is being ranked lower even in searches. So how do you guys approach work slop? How do you guys avoid it, or what have you talked about it?
Yeah, we've definitely talked about it. I think, when it comes to content that operators are putting out, and especially when we're, managing content marketing and using AI written content, there definitely needs to be a level of human oversight into the content that's being put out there. There can be really great pieces of content that is nearly completely AI written that, applies to that specific operator's offering and their geographical area. And it's answering questions and, providing itineraries, planning, campground information that's relevant to the area. And that information has not been answered yet. But as for, the slop side of things, it's pretty easy for us to identify, whether it's those key AI buzzwords like embark or exhilarating, or it's just clearly not human written. That's where it gets more into the low quality content. But as far as the good content as well, as long as it's providing value to individuals who are making searches, Google is not going to penalize that. So we can look at it through both lenses, but it definitely needs some human oversight.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've learned, and I would imagine we're going to have this as one of the components in that first accelerator deal. Um, Google, for example, owns YouTube, right? So when you do Google searches, and now that Google Overview is providing links, it used to not provide links to its sources, but Perplexity always did. So we looked at where is AI sourcing its information from, and I was intrigued to see that YouTube videos were ranking really, really high. They were almost always one of those things that were captured. And since diving into that and kind of being curious about, well, why are YouTube videos producing so high? I think there's two driving factors. The first one is it's people recording videos of themselves speaking in human language, right? It's not created or typed up, but it's people actually speaking and articulating, using their own mannerisms, using their own verbiage, using their own cues. So there's also a authenticity that comes along with that. So people are speaking on YouTube videos, however they'd be chatting. They're obviously a human if there's a human on the other side of that. And somehow AI has been maybe created to be able to disseminate and kind of pull that forward. Maybe they recognize that. But then the other component to it too is those Google videos are transcribed. And when you look at the text on the back end of those transcriptions, there's no formatting. It's literally just the text. So when you talk about indexing and speed of indexing and its ability to search all of those, it doesn't have to go through and reverse engineer like bolding or italicized or indentations. It literally can just go through the text. And again, it wants to be fast. It wants to be gregarious and it wants to be zealous on producing something because it needs to be able to generate it. So that was just an interesting observation we had this last summer. And we've been talking a lot about blog posts and text content, but video content can be super, super easy. Also, we know that video content on social media, on emails, even if it's a minute and a half video, people watch those minute and a half videos and they're highly engaging and they're highly converting because it helps consumers experience the experience before they purchase the experience. Getting back to low-hanging fruit, if we just simply think about pre-selling our experience before the sale, right? That's what people want, especially if you're a high price point, if you're a high ticket offer, if you're high relative to everybody else, they want to know that their investment is going to be fun. They want to have that affirmation that they're going to enjoy it. And how can they experience it before they even show up? Watching little YouTube videos, getting to know your managers, learning the dog's name before they show up, having a phone call with somebody on the phone, and then literally seeing that person on a YouTube video and then they get to know them. So you build a relationship, you build a bond, you get that emotional buy-in through videos, through blog posts, through your about pages, through sharing information about your guide. So all of a sudden, yeah, you might be $190 for a raft trip when the market's 130, but I already know all your people. I don't have to be sold on you as an organization because I know you. I don't know those guys. And it's only $60 more to go with people I already know and like. I will absolutely do that. So content can be fun in that case, and content can be very lucrative in establishing the know, like, and trust ahead of time.
Mhm.
You guys see anybody that's been producing YouTube videos and that kind of level, and the feedback they've been receiving?
Yeah, I feel like we have kind of been a little hesitant to make recommendations around YouTube videos, at least investing in, content creation specifically for, being cited in AIO or other generative results because it is so volatile. So I don't want to recommend to an operator to invest 20, $30,000 into a cinematographer, and then they go, "Hey, why am I not being cited in this AI overview?"
But
That's not
Liam said,
Yeah, that's not necessarily where I want them to spend their time. If they're prepared to do that already and they want to invest in cinematography for, their meta ads and their website, then by all means, let's do it and let's throw it into YouTube and see if it gets cited. But in terms of how can we quickly generate high value content to get cited, generating blogs is so low risk because it's so easy that is, where I recommend starting. But it's kind of in that same realm of territory, like we were talking the other day, whether it's, Reddit or other platforms. If you have the time to pay attention to it, by all means. Otherwise, we'll probably have a bigger conversation about that. Do you have anything to add to that, Brandon?
No, no, I think that's spot on. I mean, there's industry leaders that are regularly producing great video content. I mean, we all know when you want to look at great whitewater video content, Oars is going to have some great stuff. And Liam works closely with Oars on their SEO strategy and some of our other enterprise clients. And, again, it's like if you've been continuously investing in the brand, you're already ahead of the game. It's a great example of that.
So I want to lean into this, right? So that is talking about getting content in front of a general audience segment, right? And kind of that general audience to try and capture people new who might be searching. It just clicked when you guys were mentioning through that the general audience search for them is relative to other audiences a very expensive, risky audience to get in front of. The audiences that are super neglected, I think, within this industry are those that are already in your wheelhouse, right? It's that list of emails that have been with you beforehand, or it's that asset list that you have on people who already know, like, and trust you. You go back to like the story branding efforts, you go back to so many marketing books. We know the cost to capture in the general scene is high, but we know the cost to convert people who already know, like, and trust you is very, very low.
Yep.
So, and this is one of those things that we're going to get into within the accelerator is not just content creation for your general audience, but utilizing AI to create cadences and sequencing on using that content and getting that information in front of your audience followers, whether it be on those platforms that are on social media, your groups, or whether it be in your email list, but to create little small sound bites and small segments for people who already know, like, and trust you. When I was talking about the dog's name, and I was talking about the about guide kind of stuff, those are going to be the things that it's hard to get out in front of people. But for those that are on your email list, man, our email list and our conversions are so high. And we've been watching this for a long time. You look at the stickiness rate for our blog post. I have people from before I even got into this industry that are still following me, and that thing just continues to grow. And we only lose a handful of people a year. And what is most engaging is it's those about things, it's those fun things, it's those little tiny short segments and videos. Because again, it's deepening that relationship and that we don't even know who it is. That's really, well, we do know. You can see it on the back end on who's watching and who's engaging. But like when we're producing that, we don't know who's gonna attach to it. And boy, we get responses all the time on just the funniest little things. Like, how did that produce such interest? Well, that was
Sharing goofy photos gets a lot of comments. All your pride for some of these.
Yeah, right.
Kayla's pumpkin photos.
Mm,
So she's been growing a pumpkin. We did the pumpkin plan deal, right? And so she took the pumpkin plan concept and is applying it literally in her family farm. So she started growing a massive pumpkin this year. And the engagement with the pumpkin growth has been huge. We only see, not only do we see it online with people's interest when they're watching the MailChimp, but like we'll be on a sales call with somebody and they'll want to talk about Kayla's pumpkin, you know? So it's the funniest stuff, but I think that's human. And humans, we seek community, we seek connection, right? And in an online world where and in a world where connection and connectedness is falling apart and people are more on these devices and less, connecting with people, which is why I think we have a very high value proposition as an industry, by the way, that we're not leaning into strong enough as an industry as a whole. People want that connectedness, they want that connection. And it's the fun, quirky stuff that makes outfits unique, that makes it fun and engaging, that gets back to those why cores and it's different from everybody else. And it's sticky. It's so sticky. I want to ask a question. If anybody's interested in reaching out to you guys, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, the easiest way is just to go to our website, www.tomis.tech, Tech. There's a button right there at the top that says get in touch. There's also a chat bot that you can engage with and talk right to our sales team, so they'll be fielding inquiries. You can also reach out to me, Brandon at Tomis.Tech, Brandon. I'd be happy to have a conversation.
Cool, awesome.
and can people run into you in person in industry conferences this year?
Oh, yes, of course. I'll be speaking at American Outdoors this year.
As will we.
We also have some folks who are at Arrival. Is that this week or next week?
Next.
Yeah, we hit all the major conferences and stop by our booth and talk to our team about some of this stuff.
Great.
Yep, look for the ginger beer. The red beard right there, right?
That's right.
We both got the red beard rocking. I wonder if how, it's always fun when you engage with people online and you see them in person. Like you get to see like how tall they are. It's like, oh, maybe we could actually pass as brothers. Or sometimes like they're really tall or really short compared to what you'd anticipate.
Yep.
Cool. Brant or Liam, any other ways that people could reach out to you or other contact points?
Yeah, I mean, if people want to, they can find me on LinkedIn, Liam Hauck. Other than that, yeah, circle up with folks at Thomas and get in touch with me if need be.
I'll make
Cool.
sure to put all these links and directions in the show notes.
Great.
Okay.
Got 'em.
Yeah, I'm excited to connect with y'all at the conference that's coming up and yeah, keep doing what you guys are doing. You're doing great things for the industry.
You too, Zeb. Thanks for having us.
Thanks,